Welcome, everyone, to the Minions of the Zoo Tuesday edition. I'm your keeper, Skep, Tock, and with me I have Minions Prospero,
Hello.
Jenna,
Hola.
and the Harry channel.
Good evening.
We're expecting to be joined by Blind Press later in the evening, but I hope you all are having a good day here in these interesting times we're happy to be living in. Prospero, how was your day?
It was just fine. I am doing some pre-cleaning of the garage in anticipation of the actual haulers of the junk and stuff.
Pre-cleaning.
Well, yeah, getting things that can be got out of the way so that the big shit can be hauled out more easily. And my next task is to make sure the foyer is clear for the cleaning of the attic, which is going to occur at the same time. So
Very good. So you decided not to clean by fire, just burning down the house.
No. I've got somebody who's quite reasonable in what they do, and they have a large team and youthful people who can happily run up and down stairs, including the sons of the individual who's doing it. Both of them are quality athletes. Both play football, both sides of the ball, and basketball, and are in prime shape and just love doing that kind of thing. And so my only job is going to be throw that away, stick that over there for me to go through, donate it or throw it away. I don't care. You know, they're willing. Pardon, Jen?
Will you eat bonbons as this happens?
No, I'm going to be running around like a chicken with my head cut off while this happens. Because there's a lot. There's just no other word for it. There's just a lot of shit to be gone through. I mean, you know, my mother was a pack rat and never went through jack shit. And she got all her parent stuff. So I'm looking at like 100 years of accumulated crapola. How are you today, Skep?
Oh, I'm just Jim Dandy. Everything's just fine.
Yeah, it's just...
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. No,
Yeah.
I'm doing okay. Some days are more challenging than others, but today was a day much like any other, and I was just contemplating how happy I am to be alive and be who I am at this point in my life. I mean, I see so many other people that I don't want to be in life, and I'm just so pleased to be myself.
30 seconds on Twitter can do that.
Yeah, I'm actually convinced that may be why I keep going back to Twitter.
It makes me feel a whole lot smarter and a whole lot happier and a whole lot mentally healthier.
Yes, it's like I'm the one who's well adjusted for a change, you know. So.
Yeah, I know. It is like as ill-tempered and as poorly adjusted as I am about certain things. Other people are having a really hard time, and that's not the sympathetic really hard time. No. They're just a mess.
I understand. Jenna, how was your day, hon?
I spent it snuggling with kids and watching the first 4 episodes of that show, Yellowstone.
Oh, okay. You like it?
The show?
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually watch it with my dad, but
yeah,
I didn't feel well, so I watched it with my kids.
Right.
Not always appropriate, though.
Yeah, they're growing up. That's the rationalization I always gave myself. Oh, they're going to run into this at some point. But
yeah, it's not about Yellowstone National Park.
No.
Yeah.
It's a grown-up show.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, anyway, Harry, how was your day?
Oh, it was interesting. Started at 4:40 in the morning. It's been a very long day so far.
Was it the Nobel Committee calling from Norway to tell you that you'd won again?
Yeah. You know, the whole thing about shielding kids from adult stuff, I think people really overthink it because a lot of this stuff, without any context, the kids just don't know what's going on. And I
Right.
still, I still remember the very first time I was around when somebody told a joke and I didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And the joke was, they were making some joke about Billie Jean King, the tennis player, saying that she got a new sponsorship. And then, of course, the question is, well, what was it? And then the answer is Snap-on Tools. And
Yeah.
I had no context whatsoever as a little kid to understand what the hell that was supposed to mean.
That happened.
I didn't know.
That happened to me. Watching movies that I remember watching as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and pennies dropping all over the place about subtext that I never saw. It's like as kids, we watched the Warner Brothers cartoons, and they had lots of bright colors and action and fun stuff going on, without getting some of the very not adult themed, as in dirty adult themed, or a double. There were some double entendres, but
Those are the best kind of entendres.
yeah. But the other kind, just some other things. The two dogs, Lenny and George. You read of Mice and Men. Suddenly, that cartoon isn't as damn funny as it is when you're watching it as a kid.
Rocky and Bullwinkle were actually pretty excellent. And, as you get older, you go, that Natasha's pretty hot, actually.
Yes.
She's got a nice figure, takes good care of herself.
Well, you learn
Just doesn't wear an overabundance of fabric.
She's probably got a PhD in mathematics. I don't know.
Yeah. But the double joke, though, in the name of Boris Godunov, because of the opera Boris Godunov.
Good enough, right?
And that's another one of those things that doink, there went the penny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course, Looney Tunes just was full of it. Bugs Bunny was a real Weisenheimer.
Well, that's what I meant by the Warner Brothers.
Well, but I mean, the point is,
Termite Terrace.
It doesn't harm the kids that much. I mean, you don't need to beat yourself up about kids occasionally getting exposed to stuff. You're going to make mistakes. They're going to stumble across stuff they don't understand. If you don't make a big deal out of it, they probably will just move on.
I was there and let them.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I know I'm not in any position to give you parenting advice, considering the level of experience you've had. I'm just saying, I used to be a kid, and I just kind of speaking from personal experience. It's like, don't make a big deal out of it. Don't beat yourself up. And
watch an
it'll be fine.
episode of Yellowstone, and you'll see what I mean.
Sure.
I remember when I was 5 and Dirty Dancing came out.
Mm-hmm.
And my family, after Sunday dinner, aunts, uncles, and those people were watching it, and Eric and I were supposed to be asleep on the couch, and I watched it. Wasn't supposed to, but it didn't catch me. And I got the entire thing. That's what I worry about. Because, I didn't get the abortion part or anything like that, but, I got the... I got what Johnny and Davey were doing.
Yeah. Well, things just used to be a lot less uptight in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And parents are just, you guys are just beating yourselves up way too much.
Yeah, we have a new Puritanism that's really kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I saw Blazing Saddles and Holy Grail and a bunch of stuff, and there was stuff in there that I didn't understand at the time, but my life would not have been better if I had waited 10 years to see Holy Grail.
Mm-hmm.
No one's like would have been
no.
rather to wait.
I mean, I didn't understand all of what was going on at the Castle Anthrax. Those ladies did seem rather friendly. But I just know that if I see a grill-shaped beacon, I'm in.
And now it's time for the spankings.
Bad, wicked, evil, naughty Zoot.
Yeah.
God, that's a good movie.
Yes, it is.
I showed my kids South Park, longer and uncut. You know, the movie. I showed them that movie when they were fairly young, and they enjoyed every second of it. I still rewatch that with Andrea every once in a while, just because it's such a cinematic masterpiece, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, there is some masterful stuff in there, and there's meaning on a lot of different levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
they're usually in really.
It caused a huge fight with my then. We had just finalized our divorce, and my ex was severely pissed when the kids came back from my house having seen South Park and raving about it.
Oh God, were they singing the Uncle Fucker song?
Oh yeah. Oh God,
Yeah.
yes. Andrea and I sing some of those songs together. It's really disturbing.
Yeah, of course it is. It's just there are times that the only thing, if some news story comes on a television that you're being exposed to, I mean, I don't willingly do that, but occasionally it happens. All I want to do is start singing "Shut Your Fucking Face, Uncle Fucker."
Shut your fucking mouth, Uncle Fucker. You're
Yeah.
a motor-biting bastard, Uncle Fucker.
Yeah, it's just it's such a, and I mean, asses of fire is spoken of with some frequency.
Yeah, just that's the name of the offending movie that gets Mrs. Broflovsky all steamed up to
All bent.
Get Bill Clinton to invade Canada. So
Is that a 10-gallon hat, or are you just enjoying the show? God, Madeline Kahn was good in that movie.
Yes,
but anyway, I'm easily distractible. Sorry. Yes, my day was fine. Skep.
It's fun to just be hanging out with people and not thinking about serious things tonight. I really am enjoying this. You had some comments earlier on in our little chat that we kind of throw things back and forth on Discord, and I was thinking about your comments about Biden's report card, place him in historical context and all that sort of thing. And your list of characteristics about, the fact the man we put in the presidency is a kinky pedophile who has a basic lack of understanding of how economics works, truly does not understand macroeconomics. I don't think he understands microeconomics either, actually.
I don't think he's had a reason to.
No, he's exactly, that knowledge has never come his way, and his rapidly failing mental and physical health are just just every reason in the world that this guy should not be president. And you made the comment that he sounds more like a late Roman emperor, and I got to thinking about that. Biden really does run an imperial style of presidency. It's some of the autocracy, the autocratic manner is reminiscent to me of FDR. Does anybody else get that vibe, or is that?
Yeah, no, it is, and also he was in an imperial administration.
Oh yes,
with the Obama administration.
He was the proconsul.
Yeah, and we're inches from the beatings will continue until everyone applauds. It's the press is still so twisted about Orange Man Bad that they're just lapping up most of what Midwit Midge throws at them. Anybody who asks hard questions, she treats them, there's implied ad hominem in tone of voice and use of words. and every time, what's his name, Peter Ducey,
Yeah.
asks a question, he is the proverbial deer in the headlights for her middling wit and middling intellect.
She actually gets the deer in the headlights.
Well, she does, because he's asked the question that's not to be asked. I mean, he's perpetually screaming that the emperor is naked.
Right.
Well, did you know she worked at CNN in between Biden and
Obama? Yeah.
Obama and Biden.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's press secretaries aren't neutral. You don't expect them to be neutral, but Midge is pretty amazing at at just making shit up out of whole cloth. This Sheriff Joe shit she pulled out of her ass yesterday.
What was that about?
Oh, he's long been called Sheriff Joe. And it's like, no, honey. No.
Why would anyone call him that?
Number one, name is already associated with Joe Arpaio. So
that's a good point.
Why would you even go there?
Is this some sex game he plays with the children?
It might be. Let me pin a badge on your nipple. I mean, your shirt there, honey. I don't know. I really don't know where the fuck she got it, because somebody dug around. I ran into it on Twitter where there had been one mention by one person calling him Sheriff Joe, and it was over the crime bill. And I was like, he okay. Sheriff Joe. I mean,
crime bill?
Yeah, going all the way back to that. And some endorsements he's made of stiff sentencing requirements and things like that. The stuff everybody's now saying is
Joe Biden's press secretary sparks confusion after calling the president Sheriff Joe.
Yeah.
Monday's White House press briefing sparked some confusion on social media after mentally retarded press secretary Jen Psaki referred to President Joe Biden as Sheriff Joe. While speaking to the press about the recent $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that was signed into law by Biden on Monday, Psaki came out with a nickname for POTUS, which raised a few eyebrows. Psaki said, "And as our executive order is an indication of the president is very focused, they call him Sheriff Joe for a reason, on the implementation of this, making sure we keep waste, fraud, and abuse. We prevent waste, fraud, and abuse, that we are working directly hours a day, which is what Mitch Landrieu will be doing with governors, local, and others." She sounds like she's losing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the most articulate individual, when having to go out and try to spin.
Well, anyway, it says shortly after Psaki called Biden Sheriff Joe, memes and confused tweets start to pop up on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
With more than a few comparisons being made to Sheriff Joe Arpaio, the infamous law enforcer from Arizona who ran for the Senate and spread conspiracy theories about Barack Obama's birth certificate and so forth. And,
conspiracy theories that were started, by the way, by Blumenthal.
Oh my goodness!
In the Clinton camp, but we don't really. No. Of course he didn't do anything like that.
It's as bizarre as the nickname might sound. It does appear to have its origins from Biden's time as vice president in the Obama administration. Although it seems many people have either forgotten about it or that it never happened in the first place and was nothing but a figment of Washington, D.C.'s imagination. Back in 2009, during the first few months of Obama's presidency, Biden was placed in charge of supervising stimulus spending and was dubbed by Obama as Sheriff Joe, quote, unquote, while he oversaw the job.
Oh, for Christ's sake, seriously.
So they found a quote. They found one thing that Obama said, and the president said it was determined that I had less than 2% waste or fraud. That's how I became known. The president started calling me Sheriff Joe. I'll bet President Obama never called you that more than once.
He probably called him that after he caught him wandering around in cowboy boots and cat pistols.
Yeah.
No,
and
this
nothing
reminds
else.
me of a party I went to with some terribly clever people. They were all like high-priced lawyers, and we were playing some stupid game where the contest was to name as many sandwiches you could made out of an ingredient starting with the letter A. And we spent a good 20 minutes arguing about whether an arugula sandwich was actually a thing. And this guy
Yeah.
he was just gonna go to the mat on the idea that he deserved a point for arugula sandwich.
No.
And none of the sane people would have anything to do with that. It's that kind of special pleading that people do when they think they're very clever. And this is like, oh, well, we got away with it because we found one instance.
Yeah. They
Well-
call him Sheriff Joe for a reason.
Technically, I could eat an arugula sandwich. There's nothing stopping me from putting arugula. It's like, shut
Can I go
up.
back to Sasha for a second? Why she was for CNN against Trump?
Sure.
She wrote a piece about how Black people need to remember he's racist and ignore the fact that they have more jobs than ever. And it's just to, it was pretty much don't leave lion eyes.
Oh yeah, I mean, record
It was-
unemployment in the Black community. Don't pay attention to that. He hates you.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
she said
Yeah,
in her article.
10 years worth of funding of historic Black colleges and universities rather than yearly having to come and dance for your supper. It's because he hates Black people. That's why he funded
Well,
Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign. He absolutely hates Black people.
We know.
Fuck's sake.
Why do we end up with presidents like Joe Biden? I mean, nobody got up in the morning and said, I want to elect a mentally declining pedophile crook as my president. Nobody wants that. You can't find one person in the United States who would sign up for that. Right out of the box.
One of two things. They thought Trump was going to be unbeatable because the economy was doing well, and we did have things like record Black unemployment, low unemployment.
And
I'm not really talking about how did Biden himself get elected. Why can we not elect better people? I noticed a trend really set for a long time. We haven't had a good man in office in a very long time.
Why would clever people go into politics when they can make a fortune in business? I mean, seriously, why would somebody who had a great deal of potential and focus, drive, and energy, let's say an Elon Musk?
It sounds to me like you think the process is broken. I don't think I disagree either.
Oh no, it's broken.
But what can we do to fix that process? What is it about the process that's broken that gives us people like this? I agree with you as far as you go. What is it that does this?
It's fundamental
It's
to
the
the
system.
voters. It's fundamental to the voters. They just keep voting these fuckers in for.
But why don't they
half
have
a
a better
century.
class of person to vote for? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Well,
But
because they're
there's
not
nobody
asking
willing to
for one, but they
run.
don't support them when they show up.
And they also have it's not just the presidency, the Senate, and the House of Representatives that is just this cycle of it's almost like the American people have this need to cut and then they start to get away from it and get healed and therapy. Nancy Pelosi comes right back and goes, here's a razor.
It sounds like you're saying we can't stand prosperity. I think there's an element of that in there. I don't know, Harry. What do you think? Why don't we get better people? Why don't we get better people
Well,
to run
okay.
for office?
Well, it's complicated. Not to go all Tim Pool on you, but if you go back to the beginning, politics was a part-time job that people did because it was a civic duty.
Right.
Government was fairly small. You know, we might be able to raise some taxes on some whiskey, maybe get some tariffs, no big deal. You go forward to the Civil War, Hormel gets a contract for some poorly preserved salt pork, you know, but there's money to be made. And parties become stronger, and the process of becoming a politician becomes a much longer and more difficult road, because suddenly there's money to be made and there's people backing candidates to get into these positions. The political machines are part of it. You end up with your Tammany Halls and your Boss Tweeds and all that sort of good. Your Daily Machine,
Yeah.
Pendergrass Machine. You get all these because there's suddenly a profit motive, and being a politician then becomes a career. And so you look at a guy like Leon Panetta, and Leon Panetta was originally a lawyer. The the unions, like the AFL-CIO, paid to have him put through law school. And when he came out of law school, he immediately went to work as an attorney for them, guaranteed job.
Yep.
And they dusted him off and ran him for congressperson when there was a political scandal.
He was
Sorry?
he was the right ethnicity. He had the right training, and actually, and he's a very liberal man. But I'll defend him because I got to know him personally. He and Jack Borsting and I used to sit and work out the Naval Postgraduate School's funding every year. And those were 2 meetings, but 2 times I spent 5 hours with the guy with just one other person. I got to know the guy a little bit. He is bright on the level of brilliance.
He is actually well, I think he was actually very bright.
Yep.
But now he basically served in government for most of his life. First as a congressman, and then later working in the White House. Has a big ranch in Carmel Valley, Belladonna Ranch, and his son is now holding his office. So it's become a dynasty. So where does John Q. Public and his kid factor into this equation? Well, they don't. It's very, very unusual for anybody who isn't connected to a political machine to actually make it into politics now, because there's just too damn much money, which is why THUR winning in New Jersey is such an amazing thing.
Yes.
It is possible for somebody to win these things. And actually, Panetta, he had to go against a guy named Burt Talcott. And Burt Talcott was actually pretty popular, but he had a little bit of a scandal. And so the Democrats are never shy about exploiting an opportunity when something bad happens. So they swept right in, and Panetta was in office continuously until he retired.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, so that's just an example. I mean, the Truman was a haberdasher machine. He was a Pendergrass machine, right?
Yeah. Yes.
He was originally like a haberdasher or some silly thing like that.
Mm-hmm. Haberdasher, hat maker. Men's clothier also. I mean, he crossed, I think, over, but yeah.
Yeah, but politics is basically a machine, and they have taken on the role that the clergy used to have in ancient Egypt.
How do you arrive at that?
Well, there's the executive power sort of at the top, right? And that's sort of the pharaohs.
Okay.
But then somebody has to administer all the stuff. Somebody has to figure out if they pay their taxes, who gets the water, where the laborers go, all that sort of stuff. There's this huge machine that runs the government. In the case of ancient Egypt, it was the clergy. And they did bring a few slaves in who were actually pretty good at math. We won't talk about those people right at the moment. But
they're from the Congo.
They were from the Congo. It was good at math and shit. But yeah, it is a problem. I mean, politics is inherently broken because the government has become so big and so valuable that a regular person won't do it. I mean, how could you even... People say that AOC makes too much money. right? They laugh at how she's a socialist making what $180,000 a year. Like
Yeah.
that's a lot of money for somebody who has to maintain a residence in Washington D.C. The only way somebody like that can actually, a lot of these Congress people, these Congress creatures, are rooming 2 and like 3 and 4 to an apartment to try
Yeah.
to get by. A lot of these
They're just
younger Congress
crash
people.
pads.
They're
Yeah.
just crash pads. It's not a lot of money. DC's a really expensive place to be. So if you want to actually fix this, the only real way to fix it would be to try and rein in the size of government and return it to its roots, where it becomes something where there isn't really a big profit motive.
I think that
you-
toothpaste is out of the tube.
Oh, I agree too. We could potentially reform a lot of different things. We could strengthen the office of the Inspector General. We could do a lot of stuff to try to clean things up. We could put some real ethics reform in to make it less attractive to really corrupt people. Hell, we could even have a lottery, for all I care, for the House of Representatives.
We could even
glass
make it
pastry.
smaller. We could make it smaller. We could make government smaller.
Very
Concentrate the power into fewer hands so it's easier
Yeah.
to corrupt them. Yeah, that
Well,
sounds like a plan.
Harry, I want to.
Oh, you mean the size of government, not the number of
The
people.
size, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking, yeah, let's have 100 people. That'll
It's
be.
going to cut a lot of the function away, also. So.
Well, that's what I meant. But you said that toothpaste is already out of the tube.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you can't. If you physically cut the size of government, that's the only way I see to begin backing out of the professional politician. You have to make politicians less valuable,
Yep.
essentially to special interests.
You have to kneecap the lobbyists
Yeah,
somehow.
that's
And short of glassing K Street, which would kind of make a mess in DC.
you just get new maggots.
You just get new maggots. I mean, it's funny because everybody blames Citizens United, and that's not the problem. All Citizens United was a pushback from one particular machine in politics against the unfettered capability of the other machine to raise money through their exempted classes, i.e. unions.
Just want to state that Harry made a good. I'm sorry, I'm having word troubles today. He put out a good reason for high-end Section 8 houses for Congress.
Yeah. It is intriguing where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez lives because she lives in prime real estate land.
It's lovely.
She lives.
Yeah, she lives at the Navy Yards, and
Where?
that recently developed, very high end.
Infinity pool.
While she's complaining about the paltry pay for Congress critters, it's amusing. She could have easily lived in a bedroom community, which a number of them choose to do, and then they commute to work.
There are some of them that sleep in their office.
Yes, yeah, they
She-
do because
She
they
has a
don't.
Tesla. A nice cheap Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she doesn't have enough
no
money.
Tesla is cheap.
She's living in Washington D.C. Even though I think there's some giftage going on from somebody. She's getting a very sweet deal because, of course, that's what people do. They go to Washington D.C. and out of the kindness of people's hearts, they give them an excellent deal on
Yeah.
prime real estate at a reasonable cost.
Or buy
I
them a
don't see
condo.
Elon
or
Musk
something.
giving her a car.
I don't think Elon Musk gave her a car
No, someone bought her a car.
Yeah,
or
and the
leased it to her
Oh.
below
Yeah.
market
Yeah.
rate or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, and she could easily, because there is a subway stop right there at the Navy Yards, because that's where the ballpark is, take the metro to the Capitol. But not her. She's too high profile. It used to be we didn't know half the time who these Congress critters were. If they were not your district's Congress critter, there were very few congressmen that you knew. You knew the Speaker of the House, the whip, the minority leader, and the minority whip, if you were tuned in. And that was it. And
People
now,
did read newspapers. I mean, there were people that were tuned in, but they were one step away from the guy who had the room with all the stuff pinned to the wall with the red yarn.
well, yeah. I mean, there were some committee chairs that came to be known because the committees became more and more powerful. But when I was a child, some congressperson from New York was not usually a byword of dinner table conversation. And it is now. You look at all the bitching and moaning that goes on about senators from here or senators from there or senators wherever within states that those senators don't represent. It's all viewed as national now. All of it is viewed as national. There has been so much power ceded to the federal government. The states have been willing to do
Actually,
this.
I think you're hitting it. I think you're hitting it right on the nose. That's really what a lot of
The 17th
has
Amendment
happened.
was a mistake.
Well, we have ceded so much power to the federal government, and so much power to the government. The federal government has been the reason for that is all about money. You
Yes.
know, the federal government
Lobbyists.
is very good at gathering money and dispersing it, and then using that as blackmail. Essentially, you know, we will withhold your federal funds unless you do what we tell you to do.
Like change the speed limit to 55 or set up a DUI law with a limit of 0.08.
All right.
I have
Or
a modest proposal for you, Skep.
Mandate vaccinations. Yeah. Like what?
So imagine here's a campaign reform thing. I'm not saying this is a good idea. I haven't thought it through. But what if somebody's running for Congress in, say, the 1st District of New York? What if only people who reside in the 1st District of New York or companies that are headquartered or have operations in the 1st District of New York were allowed to contribute to that campaign?
And I think that's a very good idea.
And you basically just
How
said
do you control that?
How do we control campaign donations now?
We don't. We say we do, but we don't.
Well, I mean, that is probably true in a very realistic sense, but we do take the name, address, and profession, like the employer of people who donate.
Yes.
Right? So it's not like there isn't some data and there aren't some laws. There are limits on how much an individual can donate, and they they can even see jail time if they try to circumvent those things. So I would just use the mechanisms that we have now, but it would prevent people in California from donating to a senatorial campaign in Virginia. It's none of my damn business.
Would it really? Because what if they donated to a political action committee that was just for a particular party, and that particular group was supporting that particular candidate? And do they lose their right to free speech? Can they not run an advertisement saying we support this candidate with money from that California donor?
Well, that's the proposal. You basically say all of the money for the election has to be raised locally. Full stop.
Yeah.
That guy in New Jersey won with $150 spent.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're talking about free speech, right? I mean, I can still express my opinion. I just can't financially back somebody in a district that I have no right to vote in.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I'm not saying it's a good idea. It's just I'm sitting here chatting with my friends, and Skep's saying, "How could we solve this?" And it's like, okay, well, what about that? I'm just running it up the flagpole to see if anybody salutes.
And it's exactly the right answer. It's precisely the right answer. The problem that I see with it is, how do you make it workable? That's the real.
How do you
problem.
enforce it? Yep.
Yeah. How do you keep people from circumventing anything that you would put in their way?
Well, you could just. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the deterrent needs to be steep. You mentioned jail time. I'm not so interested in the jail time as I am the fine.
Well, if I wanted to give money to who's your new governor?
My new governor?
Yeah.
Oh, Youngkin.
Youngkin.
Glenn.
So suppose I had wanted to give money to Youngkin, I could send $11,000 to you.
Yeah.
It would be below the gift limit for the IRS.
Correct.
And then with a wink and a nod, you would agree to give $10,500 and keep the $500 handling fee for yourself for your trouble, and donate that in on my behalf. So it is obviously it's not a perfect system because you might run into issues with that sort of thing.
Yeah, and then you end up with wire fraud.
But it doesn't. But it does at least put some sort of limits on it. Most people don't consciously go out of their way to just break the law.
Yeah, I mean, well, we put limits on how much people could donate, and then PACs became a thing.
Yeah, well, we've decided that we don't really effectively want limits on it, or they would limit it. That the other thing we could do is change the way that campaign funds can be used, and we actually don't allow them to just make it into an all-you-can-eat buffet for leftover campaign funds when they stop when they retire. Because the amount of latitude they have with respect to unspent campaign funds is offensive.
Yes, it is.
It would be nice if it was moved to offset the national debt.
You could offset the national debt. You could put it into the Yellowstone graffiti fund. I mean, I don't care what you do with it. Just don't let the individual benefit from it.
Yeah,
And this whole thing.
Go ahead.
Well, this whole idea of having like these no bid contracts paid with campaign funds, where AOC can just hire her boyfriend without there being any kind of normal procurement, is kind of ridiculous. If you're using effectively money on the government behalf, there's only limited circumstances where a no bid selection process should be allowed.
Yeah, that's
Get no argument from me. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been in. I've received government contracts on a no bid basis, and I have bid competitively for them. They both. There are reasons to do it both ways.
Yeah, of course, and sometimes you
Government
have
contracting. That's an enormous conversation.
to. Well, imagine if you just had a thing where AOC, if you're going to hire somebody who's a relation to you, and we don't need to quibble about what that is, but we simply say it has to go by some sort of ethics board where they look at the qualifications of the person. Is the person capable of doing the work?
Yeah.
Are they actually qualified? You can't just give $200,000 to your boyfriend in exchange for services in quotes, and then
so now you have
a receipt.
Now you have another oversight committee as a branch of government.
We already have oversight. We already have ethics committees in there. But before you get to hire, I'm just talking about the existing stuff. I would substantially expand the IG.
Quiz custodian, buddy. We have ethics committees.
Yeah, but actually give them
themselves.
teeth.
Yeah, but they're policing themselves. That's why I'm, who watches the Watchmen, the same crowd of people who, are the Watchmen.
Well, like internal affairs for police departments. I mean, community oversight is good.
Well,
if you have problems with your police force, and there are police forces that need some reining in, there's no reason why internal affairs shouldn't be coming down on the bad cops.
Yeah, I mean, I agree very much with your suggestion about the Inspector General's office should be strengthened and should be as removed and as apart as possible from interference. There's, by and large, most of the inspectors general within their varying departments of the executive do a pretty good job. The difficulty is where those people come from and who they're beholden to when they get in that job. It's a little bit like the FBI. For a while we've been telling ourselves more out of comfort than out of proof that the rot at the FBI is in DC. It's headquarters. That's where the shit really is. And it's become abundantly clear over the past several years that is not the case, that the rot extends down and out through the hydra that is the FBI.
That's another interesting thing. What do you do when an entire branch, an entire department, significant sized department of government, has
rampant corruption?
Has become so corrupt to where it is essentially, for certain types of for large swaths of its basic function, it is no longer functional.
Disband.
You disband it. You take the funding for 5 years that was given to that branch of government, and you distribute it to the states according to population to help their local constabularies pick up what it is that the FBI used to do, and then you start afresh. It's about the only thing you can do. That branch.
What prevents the FBI from becoming the monster? And I'm not poking holes in your theory. I'm just asking the question: How do you keep it from happening again?
You're going to have to place restrictions on their jurisdiction. Their jurisdiction.
You think that's what the problem was too much jurisdiction?
Their jurisdiction has crept and crept and crept and crept forward.
I agree that it has, but is that the reason that they've become bad, or is it is it really the reason that they've become evil because there is just so much power and money and influence being moved around by the decisions that they have the ability to make, that the value of their influence has just become so high?
Yeah, well, the Department of Justice in its entirety is a problem. Them being a giant part of that problem. The DOJ was supposed to be operating separately within the, it's now so fully subsumed into the executive that it's impossible to separate it.
Oh yeah, you'd almost have to get rid of everybody in it.
Yeah, because they're all
and same with state.
Oh
same
yeah,
with State Department. State Department's even worse.
State Department is utter garbage. It's absolute garbage. I mean, the FBI
like the fucking European Union, as your State Department. That's it's not America first, folks.
The mission shifted rather dramatically. For all the marvelous kissing noises that one wants to make towards suggesting that you create something like a Peace Corps. The downstream effect of that was to turn the State Department into the all cultures are beautiful tourism bureau for the United Nations more than for the United States.
Yeah.
And they're too big. They are far too big. We don't need ambassadorial staff in I'd say half the countries that we operate in. The European Union insists on being a European Union. Why don't we just have a EU ambassador and let that be it?
Yeah, enjoy Brussels.
Yes, or enjoy Strasbourg, wherever they decide to stick you.
Well, the obvious answer is that we may have Americans all throughout the EU, and part of their job as the consular staff is to provide services for those Americans.
Yeah, you have an attaché in each capital, and beyond that, do not have an ambassador. You can have a small office. You don't need to have an ambassador. The ambassador to the EU can get on a train, kiss the ass of somebody in Denmark in the morning, and be having dinner with the head of state in Austria that evening without ruffling a feather. It's just nonsensical, the amount of staff that we move from into, and we have enormous facilities in all these areas in Europe because that was where the toning positions are.
Mm-hmm.
So just as a brief aside, because I think while we're talking about government excess, why not dish out some scorn for the Europeans? As I understand it, the European Union, that their government, they actually pick up the entire government and move it throughout the year. They'll be in Brussels, but then part of the year they will sort of not be in Brussels, and they will just sort of take all of the offices and all the papers and everything and transport it to other locations. And they do this every single year as they sort of move in and out of Brussels as part of their normal operations. I can't remember why this is, whether it's just to send the EU people back to their home districts. But it's enormously expensive what they do.
Well, we have
When-
the
when the-
interwebs, work from home.
The EU's national governments unanimously decided in 1992 to lay down in the EU treaty where the EU institutions are officially seated.
Mhm.
This decision had important consequences for the working arrangements for the Parliament. Its official seat and venue for most of the plenary sessions officially became Strasbourg. Parliamentary committees were to have their meetings in Brussels, and Parliament Secretarial, its staff, would be officially based in Luxembourg. In 1997, this whole arrangement was incorporated into the EU treaty.
So yeah, so they basically pick up and move everything throughout the year to satisfy
sure
these
as hell do.
requirements.
Yeah, they're
They sure as
bouncing
hell do.
between Brussels. Well, the Brussels to Luxembourg isn't really much of a trip, but the Strasbourg trip is a bit more.
It doesn't matter.
I
It
know.
would be like taking all of the U.S. government and moving it from Washington D.C. to Philadelphia, and
The
then back
moving-
every year.
The cost of the move is 109 million euros per year.
I bet it's got to be more than that.
That was the 2013 European Parliament study arrived at a total expenditure associated with the previous year's work in Strasbourg of 109 million for that year.
I bet there's a miscellaneous category that a
Oh.
whole lot of other stuff is in.
I bet you there's a whole bunch of per diem and allowances and slush funds and other stuff that they get to use because I'm no longer in my home district. So
yeah,
now
the
they-
miscellany.
Yeah.
Semi,
It's all basically hookers and good scotch and cigars and it's in gold
Hookers
covered
and blow.
steaks. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they didn't pick unpleasant places to be, if you notice, and they also, they're not. And that's another thing.
Yeah. Well, at least we're not Europe. Is all I'm trying to
Unair
say.
conditioned the United States Capitol. and the auxiliary buildings attached to it. Just take the air conditioning out. This is something my husband has lobbied for years. He said that the place was supposed to be deliberately chosen because it was not exactly a swell place to go once a year. So people would go and they would get the business done and they would fuck off back home.
Can you
Because-
imagine if the capital of the country was Monterey, California?
Well,
That would be pretty
terrible.
horrible for Monterey.
Yeah, it would be disgusting because Monterey is it's one of the most lovely places to live on Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they had to make DC into something.
Monterey was the state capital before basically before California was part of the United States.
Back
yeah.
when I was a
I
kid.
remember doing sort of one of these pub quiz kind of things at one point,
Spanish aren't stupid.
and I asked some guy. I basically made up the question, and I asked him what the first capital of California was, and he, got it wrong. I said, no, it's Monterey. He's like, what?
Well, because
That doesn't count. That wasn't part of the United States. I didn't say first capital of California when it was in the United States. I said first capital of California, asshole. You lose.
yeah, and I mean it was well positioned along the Camino
Do you know what the
Yeah.
first capital of California was when it was associated with the United States?
Oh, God. I'm trying to remember. I thought it was San Jose.
It was San Jose. Yeah, very good.
And then it was moved to Sacramento in much
Yeah.
the same sort of, why don't we build something in the middle of nowhere where nobody wants to be?
Yeah.
Oh, like Brasilia. Yeah,
Yeah, like Brasilia.
Oh,
right.
Brasilia makes me sad because it makes my little retro-futuristic heart kind of happy that somebody had this notion.
but they
like,
stuck
it's-
it at the edge of the jungle for
it's
What was there was
it's
the
a good
60s?
it's a good idea because it showed just how foolishly optimistic they were. They literally thought that they could just plan this thing,
Yeah.
and that everything would be fine. Everything would
Just
be
hack this
fine.
bad boy out of the jungle.
Yeah, I mean,
We
it
got
makes
this.
it makes Frank Lloyd Wright's design for a modern Baghdad look pretty damn good by comparison.
Yeah, but
that
but I
wall.
feel I remember when it just seemed, and what a boondoggle that was.
Oh, is it? Yeah, huge
Oh,
boondoggle. It's a good thing
dear
they have oil.
Yeah, good bad thing that Soros is a huge investor in Petrobras, though. So yeah,
So, do you think the Scottish independence movement will die just as soon as they run out of North Sea oil? I predict it will.
Yes.
yeah. Once the Norwegians invent a bendy straw to suck out what is reputedly Scotland's, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, I'm a little all over the place. This is what happens when I wake up at 4 something in the morning.
no, they just God, the S&P. Jesus Christ, talk about a
Yeah,
group of
with
people
all
that are
of the
fit for
Scottish with
purpose.
all of their fish-based leadership.
Yeah, the fish-based leadership. That's a huge problem too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like the meme of the British and the French back in the day were the very Chad soldiers. I clear my nose in your general direction. This means war, and now it's the Great Scallop Wars.
Well, who was Sturgeon's predecessor?
Salmon.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean by fish-based leadership. Sorry,
yes,
Skep.
but you've got to remember when they've chased with the clearances, they tried to move everyone to the coast so they could learn to code. I mean, learn to fish. So you took crofters and cotters, and people who are used to a cottage garden and some sheep, and tenant farming.
You don't just learn to fish, as you know,
and then put them on the coast and tell them, go ahead and fish. The United States benefited, so did Canada, but the United States benefited tremendously from that kind of stupidity, because we ended up with enormous amounts of what was called Scots-Irish migration, and
Way back when, weren't they the Fisher people called the Fisher? The people that lived in the hills were called one thing, and the people that were the fishermen that they were fish.
You're talking about Highlanders and Lowlanders and that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were taking people out of the Highland system primarily and suggesting, and I mean there were attempts to relocate these people. There were some. I mean, there were attempts to pay them and something, and get them set up, but you only need so many people to fish too. I mean, that becomes a problem, and we're not going to mention the fact that a potato famine almost destroyed Ireland when they're an island surrounded by fish.
Yeah, there is a certain humor to that.
But you don't repurpose human beings that way. I mean, this was the whole grotesque learn to code nonsense that arose from putting coal miners out of work.
Well, there is a small difference between the learn to code thing and the learn to fish thing, because if you take somebody who's not well suited to coding and you sit them in a chair and say, "Okay, write some code, Skippy," the worst thing you'll get is code that you can't use, or you'll get shitty code. You take somebody who's not good at fishing and put them on a boat, you end up with dead people.
Yeah.
I mean, fishing is one of the hardest, most difficult, most physically demanding, most dangerous professions that exist on this planet.
And the waters of the North Atlantic are not, and the waters of the North Sea are not hospitable water.
Anything with sea in it is not hospitable.
Yeah, we're not talking about Tarpon Springs, Florida here, folks.
Yeah, you're not talking Gulf. You're talking like the big windy, nasty part by the north of the Orkneys. Yeah,
yeah, and well, or the Western Isles.
Yeah.
And
you're talking the North Atlantic, which is
evil
just
in and of itself.
Fucked up.
Well,
yeah, that's a fucked up.
Our side, the Canadian side, is dangerous enough. I mean, it's
nothing compared to the North Sea, though.
No, but there's no small wonder that Gloucester has the day that go down to the sea in ships. You know, I mean, it's just that they're the waters. If you're out in a fishing vessel and a nor'easter comes your way, you're kind of fucked. And that kind of weather persists on the other side of the Atlantic. Those things go screaming across the Atlantic.
Oh, the currents that they have up in those islands, they generally tell you that the worst currents on Earth are the ones that flow in those narrowly packed islands just off Alaska, the coast of Alaska, of southern Alaska. And the second worst are the Scottish Islands, the ones on the west side of Scotland.
Yeah. The Western Islands, the Hebrides.
The currents going through those little passages there are vicious. They change. They reverse. They literally reverse.
The Irish Sea is
wrong.
Is
just evil.
The Irish Sea is not safe. You know, I mean, it's not
the Irish Sea. It's
not particularly hospitable.
The point I was making is anything with the word sea in it is not safe.
You're not.
We're just talking about degrees of dickishness.
You're not incorrect. There's a reason the channel was used so often because it is.
There are seas that are less of a problem. For example, the Mediterranean compared to the North Sea is a little pussycat. It's nice and enclosed by all those nice continents, and it's just a calm little puddle.
The Caribbean
compared to the Atlantic.
The Caribbean is not that bad, except during hurricane season.
But hold on. Like we recently had a story where Alec Baldwin shot somebody and killed them with what was supposedly a safe gun. My attitude about the ocean is it doesn't matter how peaceful you think it is, you don't turn your back on it.
Oh, it turns.
And you never characterize any bit of ocean as being safe.
You know, you don't turn your back on it, you can't keep your weather eye to it.
Yeah, you always assume that nature is out to kill you, and the sea is very humbling.
The ocean is out. The ocean is out to kill you. I mean, it's very, very much out to kill you. Doesn't mean you have to be afraid of it. It means, number one, learn to swim. Number two, learn what rip currents are. And number three, don't drink and boat. That's for people who aren't engaged in fishing. People who are engaged in fishing, light your candles, because you never know what day might be your last. It is a very, very rough business. Merchant mariners have known that for years.
Yeah, and you usually will not get rich fishing. It is not just difficult. It is also not a great way to make a lot of money. No. But people do it because there are people in this world who would rather be outside fighting the elements, making an honest living with their sweat and their toil, than being under freaking fluorescent lights.
Yep.
There are people who cannot cope with it. My dad was one of those people.
Yeah.
He wanted absolutely nothing to do with any of this stuff. He was working as an assistant manager at a Montgomery Ward's. And he decided that, nope, screw this. He did not last very long at all. I think he went off and that's when he became a lumberjack.
No, was that before the gold panning?
Oh, yeah, the gold panning was later. Yeah, but he became a lumberjack for a while, and that was much.
And that's okay.
That was okay.
Do you wear high heel suspenders and a bra?
Not when he was around me.
No, I meant do
Speaking-
you, because you want to be a girly, just like
no,
you
he
do.
wanted it. He was the lumberjack. I'm not a lumberjack.
I
But
understand.
the point being that it's
okay,
people
Harry.
do make these kinds of choices, and you can't just tell somebody to go be a thing.
It's just ridiculous.
You know, here's the thing: we keep coming back.
Except
to
go
this.
be a journalist. Any idiot can do that.
No, when I look at Japan, in Japan, the best, the brightest, the most accomplished, the ones with the greatest potential. Do you know where they end up? Government. The highest thing you can ascribe to is being a bureaucrat in Japan. There is no place in industry, maybe a little bit in the military now that's starting to develop again, but there's no place else that has the prestige of going and being successful in government. They get the best and the brightest. They really do, and it does make a difference. I mean, having someone who is as inept, as intellectually not there, and what is there is bad, as Joe Biden is, has real costs, has real measurable, discernible costs, and many that are not measurable and discernible, but they are very evident, and they are ruinous.
Well, look at his stable.
And
of
Japan
advisors.
has none of this.
Well, yeah, I mean, the state more from the chrysanthemum thrown into something holy there. It's also a very wild cultural difference.
Well, yeah, there's cultural homogeneity, or at least
yeah,
we perceive it that way. It's not really. It's really
far
not.
closer than what we have.
Well, it's it's so different from what we have. I mean, they segment. They stratify and segment. Also, they just do it completely differently.
The British are similar in that regard. They have their different stratification. They're no longer as homogeneous as they used to be. The British.
Well, no, Britain Stan is a thing.
Yeah.
And they've got 6 million Muslims living there, and probably will be Muslim majority in less than half a century.
Yeah, sorry to all the Hindi that thought they were in God's country.
Yeah,
yeah, it didn't pan out that way. The
I'm sure that the subsequent generations will integrate fully with British society.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yes,
And
they will.
radicalization will not be a thing that we need to worry about.
No, it'll be fine.
Do we have a program where we basically expatriate their nuclear weapons as they approach the 49% mark?
No, that's when they start to use them on us.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that a lot of their terroristic behavior has come from second and third generation born, because the mosques that came in, both the Wahhabi and the Deobandi in particular, have been very, very good at what they do as far as recruiting goes.
Mm-hmm.
It was a rather deliberate thing. You had in the early days of increased Muslim migration into Great Britain, they were people who had lived within the Anglosphere, and they were reasonably assimilated, but the subsequent generations have pulled back from the assimilation, and then have encouraged their fellow travelers to join them there. So you see a drop back. Anjum Chowdhury was as assimilated a Brit as you could ever possibly get, until he chose the path he chose. He was a playboy, a welfare sponge, all the marvelous things that any young man having been born in London, would do. And now he runs around in pajamas and preaches sedition. It's quite charming. Of course, they allow him up to a point. They did finally jail his ass because he did actually break the law finally. As wishy-washy as the British laws are regarding
What law did he break?
it was he was actually inciting violence. They put him away for a little while, but he's out again. I'm almost certain he's back out doing his thing. He's just a contemptible shithead.
Is he a Salafi guy? Is he a Diabandi Salafi?
I don't know what Aunt Jim chose to be.
Or is he a Wahhabist?
I need to check. Let me look up old Chowderhead.
See if he follows Sufism, because the Diabandis are big. That's the fiqh. That's all that fiqh hadith shit.
Can you switch us
It's
to
all
the
the
other
mystical stuff.
3-person layout, Skep? So I don't have to
Certainly.
resize my stupid logo.
Certainly.
I'm feeling a little cramped here. I need some elbow room. Well, that's one of them.
No.
There we go. Thank you, sir.
There we go. Just
Elbow room.
fine. Yes, I'm sorry about that, Harry.
That's okay.
I don't know what happened to Jenna.
So I was
She's
going to
doing
ask.
okay.
She had to go. She was not feeling well. I do, before we sign off tonight, I do want to know Prospero's diagnosis for which Roman emperor Biden reminds her of, because I'm going for Caligula with not Caligula. Sorry, Claudius with just a little bit of Caligula and a soupçon of Nero, just to finish it off.
That works. And to answer your question, Salafi.
Okay.
On Chattery. I have
He's a Salafi. He's not a Wahhabi.
He's a Salafi.
Interesting.
Yeah. Look, Rome isn't my bailiwick, Harry.
Well, we'll just have to get Britisher on.
Yeah, I was going to say he would be he would be absolutely perfect for this. Yeah, there's.
I see some Claudius, and Claudius to me was more. He had his shit together more than Biden does. He knew better what was going on, but he was just as venal and weak.
Well, he'd been engineered that way, and he had a fun family.
Fun family.
Which I was trying to figure out who Jill would be in this case, and it's really kind of his. It's hard to say. It really is hard to say because there's very little uxorious about Jill Biden anymore.
Oh, Jill is just an appendage. She's really kind of an NPC.
Well, I mean,
actually, I used to think she was.
I think
having a lot of influence on him, but I actually think that
I think she's
most
his
of that
handler.
influence is coming. I think most of his influence is coming from political handlers.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I just think she's his actual handler. And
she wipes his bottom, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know,
but
when he was wandering off script and she stepped forward and she was like, look at me. Look at me. I mean, we hear her saying things like this.
Yeah.
And they put her in front of the microphone when he's a babbling idiot. When they landed in Britain and she addressed the troops.
Yeah, I know.
That was a clear sign that he was incapable of giving the address.
Yeah.
And so they had her give his address. Because they had to scrabble to get something done.
Do you get the feeling that the people inside the Biden administration are just at the edge of snapping?
Well, there is
everything they're doing is going wrong, and their party's going wrong.
And there's some reports that the Kamala team aren't helping. To the point now that the Biden team
they're just avoiding them, aren't they?
Avoiding and utterly disregarding the Kamala team.
Did you hear the rumor that came out like this afternoon?
No, what was that? Oh,
the rumor is that they're looking at doing some sort of confirmation hearing in the House of Representatives, which is leading to speculation that they're going to replace Kamala. I can't substantiate any of this.
That'd
It
be
was what was floating around on the Twitter sphere, and I just like, okay,
Well-
say what? How exactly does that work? How would, short of just shaming her into stepping down, how would they get rid of Kamala as the vice president?
They could just have Hillary Clinton hire someone to kill her.
She could
kill
catch
her.
a case of Clintons. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, she could catch Clinton out.
Who would he replace her with? I mean,
It's always fatal.
I mean, I'm sorry, but I've got a big pucker fear that it would be somebody like Susan Rice, who is already, I think, one of the puppeteers, chief.
Well,
Elizabeth Warren.
Just for Skep's benefit, it could be Stacey Abrams.
Oh, that would be fun.
The Abramopotamus. Oh man.
Which would mean that Susan Rice was still running things.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who's pulling all the strings inside the White House at all.
One thing about Stacey Abrams is that, and this may be an unpopular opinion here, she's smarter than people think she is.
Mm-hmm.
They think she's some stupid Trigglypuff, and she's not. She's actually smart as a whip, and she may be funny looking and a liberal ideologue and all that stuff, but she is 10 times smarter than any other person on the squad. Guarantee. I've heard her talk. I've listened to her, with a purpose, and the spark of intelligence is there. She's utterly evil. Utterly and completely given over to the socialist cause, but she's a smart one.
Well, they've got a PR problem. I'm not sure she would help it. That's one of the things they're going to have to look out for if they want a lightweight coup inside the palace, so to speak. Where the deputy sheriff gets replaced.
Well, who is they? That's
I don't know.
Is it the crazies from the squad, or is it the moderate neo-libs who just want another nice little war to settle into, or who are we talking about?
And wasn't Susan Rice supposed to be the person in charge of the domestic agenda?
She was supposed to be.
And by the way, what's Ben Rhodes doing? Wasn't he hooked up with them again?
Oh, good Lord!
The literature major. Yeah, that's just exactly what I want. Wandering around the West Wing. West Ring might as well was part of a circus.
Yeah.
As far as sheer competency to carry out day-to-day function, Kamala Harris has it all over Joe Biden. She's just a totally unlikable individual who can't control her messaging very well because of that.
She's not very bright.
That hyena cackle.
She's not very bright, though, Prospero.
No. She's not very bright. But she's at least compos mentis. I mean, we've got somebody who is.
Yeah, you're right. You're
not.
Right.
I mean, it's.
I hear what you're saying, and you're right. You're absolutely right.
And she is already part of the administration. Of course, her administrative staff, I have no idea who's part of that. It's been kind of weird because we don't really know who's doing what in this White House. We're in the Trump White House. There was constant leaks because, of course, there was staff left over, as there always is, and they were, on speed dial with the WAPO. But I've sensed at times almost a level of frantic, the fuck is going on here from Pelosi. Because number one, she's got that fractious bunch of shitwits, the squad. And
she can't control her party, and she doesn't understand why the party doesn't get up and sit up and beg when she tells them to sit up and beg.
Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. She is overseeing the Democratic Party spinning out of control. The loss in Virginia is, there are two things that are significant. I really do think they thought they were going to be able to hold Virginia. I think that's why they put the old stolid Clinton Easta back up. And there is such a disconnect, just an amazing disconnect between central command in the Democrat Party and the voter. They're losing people of all descriptions, and they're losing them over, schools. The whole school thing is more of a cultural issue than it is a political one. I mean, very much so when it comes down to critical race theory and McAuliffe's incredible blunder.
Yes.
About parents not having any say about what's being taught in schools. Which, of course, they keep saying that's not what he said, but it's what he said. His own reaction. Yeah, but I mean, he really did mean that the parents shouldn't have a voice in curricula.
Yeah.
And fuck you for Christmas, that's the business of schools. Well, it's supposed to be the business of schools. I mean, this in loco parentis shit that we've done have turned them into babysitters, but this the curriculum in your school is very much a parental issue. Always has been traditionally unto now.
And why isn't it anymore?
Well, stupid people have had very,
two words: education unions.
Education unions and disconnected parents. They walk hand in hand. People have been in pursuit of the American dream, which morphed from getting by, healthy kids, food on the table, to latest iPhone, two nice cars, and spiffy vacations, and the Disney family package for the entire upbringing of the children. And I mean, where you go and visit the parks and stay on the property kind of thing. And people, are working themselves senseless to have stuff they never have time to use. Except for...
People used to talk like that in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a notepad I got in the 80s because, I found it atrocious coming out of college in 1980. I'm a tail end baby boomer, and I was seeing the rapacious greed in my generation. People said, why didn't you go to law school? Everybody I knew that was going to law school because you can make a lot of money as a lawyer. They weren't telling me that they wanted to go to law school because they had great and grave respect for the law or justice or anything that would generally tend to lean someone toward a profession. The people who were doing the hard work to pass the hard courses in pre-med to try to get into medical school had kind of a deeper care in mind. Yes, you can make good money as a doctor, but I didn't hear them talking about how they'd be up to their neck in tits and ass as plastics men.
I think having an expensive trophy wife would be really tedious.
Yeah, I think
that's like a goal for some people. I'm going to have a really hot wife who plays tennis a lot. Yeah, that sounds great.
Well, the rapacious greed really impacted the legal profession because it's been a race toward the bottom ever since the 70s in law. And boy, we just...
I think I agree with you. How do you mean that?
Ever since they allowed lawyers to advertise,
Oh, okay. So you're
Um,
saying the profession is hit the skids.
well, but also the individuals that went into it, because
Oh,
it
yeah.
was if you weren't going to be in finance, as in Wolf of Wall Street finance, you were go to law school. Those billable hours, bitch, they add
Yeah.
up.
Just go into tech and get a CISSP security certificate, and then you
There
can
you go.
hang out with the C-levels and tell them what policies they need to follow to keep their shareholders happy.
Well,
There are lots of things where scoundrels, with attention to detail and the
Yeah.
willingness to learn really, really boring things so that other people don't have to, can make a lot of money.
but lawyers are dangerous.
Some of
because-
us made a career out of that.
But Harry lawyers are particularly dangerous.
Yeah, they can
because
be.
well, the law carries a lot of penalty with it. It carries financial penalties with it. It carries the penalty of your life, or a time of your life in being imprisoned. There are all kinds of pressure points that the law can bring on individuals that many other professions cannot do.
Well, you remember the conversation we were having earlier in the show about politics and what's wrong with it. Gosh, who was it? I think it was Adam Carolla who was talking about this issue of the DAs. No, sorry, it was on Riquetta Law. And it used to be that the DA was just somebody in the community who was held in high regard, who would just sort of handle this role because it needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And now, there's campaigns to see who can be the district attorney, and it's a springboard to
Becoming
more lucrative-
attorney general.
Yeah, becoming attorney general, or then maybe becoming the governor of the state. And from governor, you could become, you could get a cabinet post. You could do
Or
all
you
of
could
these
be
different things.
president.
Yeah.
You know?
I was just thinking Blazing
Look at all
Saddles
the
again.
fucking lawyers that we've had.
Yeah, but you've got the DA position is suffering in the same way as the other political
yes.
positions now.
Very,
And
very.
if we're going to reform something, we could probably start at the DA, because there is an ethics apparatus there. And
There was.
we can use it. Well,
and
I mean,
ethics.
but there are bar associations, and
There
they could clean up their shit.
was a bar association that could clean up its shit. It has no interest, just like the AMA has no interest.
I'm
in
not talking at the federal level. I'm talking about locally. At the state level, states that choose to could clean up their own shit.
Yeah, one other thing is that if you want to be noticed by the National Bar, which can help you immeasurably, you're not going to rock the boat. Lawyers fucked themselves in the 70s. The reason, people always detested lawyers before because they were the guys that always had to say, sorry, you can't do that. And it really upset corrupt people to be told that, or lazy people to be told that, in corporate law in particular. What do you mean you can't? Why can't we do this? What do you mean we got to follow these rules? Yeah, well, those are the rules. That is the law. Shut up and just do it. This business of them advertising, it wasn't just the ambulance chasers. You look at the number of advertisements that you see on television for law firms. Look at how many junior league fucking Matlocks there are on Twitter. Everybody thinks they know something about it. They don't know the first fucking thing about it, but they all have opinions about it. And
they all know what they're going to do when they catch that one big case that's going to put them on the map, that one big tort award that's going to, set up their office that'll run itself for 10 years.
Yeah, so they'll just sue
I've heard those
fucking
guys
anybody.
talk.
They'll
Yeah.
sue fucking anybody
Right.
in the hopes that will be the big one.
Throw enough shit against the wall. It really is that really does happen. What Prospero is saying is absolutely true.
We've seen ridiculous judgments in ridiculous cases that prior to television, I hate to say it,
There was a time.
prior to television would never have been settled that way.
No.
And most definitely prior to the internet would never been settled that way. The fucking case against Roundup would have been laughed out of court in the 1950s. Laughed out of court.
But there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. It's changed that much since then.
And a DA like Binger would have lost his fucking license to practice law yesterday.
Yeah, there used to be enough institutional pride among attorneys.
Oh God,
And it wasn't that long ago where they would not have suffered an asshole like Binger or Kamala Harris, for that matter.
No,
They would not have people like that in their organizations, their professional organizations. Those people simply would be asked to leave. They never would come through the system in the first place. Law schools used to be a little bit of a character filter too, believe it or not. I mean, lawyers never had a great reputation, but in point of fact, part of getting into law school used to be based on character.
you didn't.
That's gone completely by the boards now.
You did not have to have an undergraduate degree to enter law school in many instances.
You don't have to have a law degree to take the bar.
No.
Every year, a few people take the bar and are admitted to practice law pro se.
Yeah. And, you know, one of my dad's good friends didn't graduate from college because he entered the Marines when the war broke out. And it was after he returned home that he entered law school without a college degree. My father was conferred his degree because he had enough credits before he left school to enlist. And with credits he got through ASTP, you know, they conferred his degree. So he had a BA when he went for his LLB, but it wasn't required to get into law school. You know, it was an entirely different world. I mean, I was raised with a belief that lawyers could do an enormous amount of good, and that the law was respectable.
Well, the small town country lawyer was, you know, the Atticus Finch. There were people like that, and they were extremely respected usually in small towns.
Oh yeah, and I mean they handled Aunt Nellie's will, and they would draw up a trust for people.
Sure.
And they handled adoptions like crazy. I mean, I found paperwork where my father was doing adoptions for people that worked in the Prudential down in Florida, where the only thing he asked for was the filing fee for the court, because they, you know, they had a law department there. You might as well sick one of the attorneys on getting the stuff done. And that was something he wanted to return to because he had a belly full of the bullshit. I mean, he never wanted to be Perry Mason, because he sucked in moot court. You know, I mean, his own assessment, that was just not his thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to, but to write up a will for somebody, you know, attorneys were taught well enough they could do that in their sleep. I mean, they'd pull the code book out and make sure they had all the I's dotted and T's crossed, but
the standard phrases.
Yeah, just doing things like that. You know, I mean, you spend so much time committing to memory, the gobbledygook of the party of the first part and the party of the second part, and you know, that kind of thing, then it becomes second nature. And it's just to be able to handle trusts and deeds and real estate closures and just simple, you know, the simple everyday things that legalese stood in the way of the little guy. And I mean, there's a reason for the legalese. You know, we don't need to belabor that point. There really is a reason that the law is written the way it's written. But
well, we're only looking at half of this because, yeah, the lawyers are bad and stuff, but it's not. It's sort of like complaining about unions being bad when you realize that the unions were able to step in and take a percentage of people's pay because the boss was terrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've got people who pay money for insurance and they become disabled and they can't work legitimately. And then they go to collect their disability and the insurance companies goes, don't want to.
Yeah.
So the average person who's, you know, is not in a position to do anything about that, they have to get a lawyer. Or if the law decides that you're a person of interest and tries to grind you to a fine paste,
Yes.
you can't declare the fifth yourself all that effectively. You really need to have a lawyer there to speak for you and handle a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, even though tragically, the entire Miranda case stands around the duty of the cops to inform the individual of their rights. You almost always have to have a lawyer to make sure your rights aren't being trampled. And even then, you can have a lawyer to make sure your rights aren't being trampled. And somebody like Binger attempts to take a steaming shit all over the Fifth Amendment.
Mhm.
In a court of law in present day, and people are actually cheering this on.
Well, he's trying to make his bones, and
he's made his bones.
Yeah.
I look at him, and everything is theater, right? So he's trying to basically play to the judge and play to the jury.
Yes.
And presumably he would be aware that he's on, TV, and a lot of people would be watching. You'd think he'd be caring more about what people at home think. And I'm sure that stupid hair that he has with that slee stack thing going on in the center of his head, and that stupid tie with the color that matches the pocket square and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the gray. He probably thinks
says short bus all
he
over.
probably thinks the gray is soothing. He's trying to he's trying to make the jury there in person not hate him. As he runs around pointing guns at people with his finger on the trigger and acting like a giant D-bag.
I know.
And also for TV, he's wearing clothes that might be appropriate for sort of trying to make the jury like him, but he almost kind of disappears on TV unless you've got the saturation turned up, because he's effectively duplicating Richard Nixon's mistake in that debate with
Kennedy.
with Kennedy back in the 60s. And I thought everybody got that memo.
Wallpaper.
Yeah, he just became wallpaper, just douchey, irritating wallpaper.
Well, his associate, his co-prosecutor, Lunch Break.
Yeah, Lunch Break
has been a real winner. I mean, that whoever dubbed him Lunch Break, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Funny.
Yeah,
I know exactly who you're talking about, the fat guy.
Yeah. And I mean,
Lunch Break.
To have in a court of law this is something Dick Wolf's Law and Order franchise ripped from the headlines. At no point would any script be accepted for Law and Order that contained the words out of a prosecutor, well, everybody needs to learn to take a beating, in regard to someone being attacked with a lethal weapon. It's
no one would believe that an officer of the court would be capable of uttering words that stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have gotten myself thrown off the jury yesterday, because it would have occurred.
Been thrown off long before now, I think.
No, yeah, I would have disqualified. I would have disqualified myself by some public utterance during the trial.
Probably got yourself locked up for contempt.
Yeah, that would have been fine. I would have, like I said, I'd have been willing to sit the 30 days or pay the fine, because anybody aims a weapon at me that I haven't cleared the breach myself, I should be able to take that weapon out of their hands and beat them with it. I mean, the idea of that numbskull doing that, Christ. Not to mention, Wisconsin code, I believe, says that it's a criminal charge to aim a weapon at people. If it is not in an immediate, in a menacing fashion. Well, there's nothing more menacing than somebody sticking their booger hook on the bang switch and staring down the barrel of a rifle.
Well, that really was a stupid thing to do, man. If that gun had gone off and had shot somebody.
Yeah. How did I know that one wasn't in the breach? You didn't let me clear the weapon.
Well, it was like Dukakis in the damn tank. I mean, it's that level of stupid.
Well, the floppy helmet thing, that was so fucking funny. That was so perfect too, because Dukakis was such a dick.
Or Howard Dean in that girly scream that ended his career.
Yeah. and on to New Hampshire. You know,
There's like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
it's
The
like
audible equivalent of a limp, clammy handshake is what that was, and
Well,
his
Terry-
whole career just tanked.
well, the most
Yeah.
pathetic thing, you know what I was talking about, Terry McAuliffe making his stupid comment about schools. He actually saying in defense of himself, well, I didn't know there was anything wrong with what I said, basically, is what he was trying to get across. Everyone applauded when I said it. And it was like, Jesus Christ, Jeb.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the room was your fanboy that you heard applaud, because not everybody in the room
He's
applauded.
new to politics.
Jesus, you would think that somebody out of the Clinton crowd, like McAuliffe is, would have better sense than to utter that shit. But that is how removed these Neros are. There's your callback.
There's my callback. Speaking of the original topic that started things
Yeah.
off, I went back recently and just sort of stumbled across an address from, I think it was 1960, and it was Reagan's famous "A Time to Choose" speech when he was endorsing Barry Goldwater. And you see sort of the proto Reagan, before he was, this was right after he'd stopped being a Democrat and re-registered as a Republican. And the caliber of the speech was kind of amazing, but just how prophetic everything was. I'm always shocked at just how prophetic. I was reading some speeches by Churchill yesterday, and these guys really knew what was going to happen.
Yes, indeed.
I think
they were students of history.
They were students of history, and you just can't get away with it, away from it. I just worry about our crumbling republic, and I would like to fix it without it collapsing and us having to make a new one, because that will take hundreds of years.
Yeah, it will, and it'll be a mess. I mean, I don't even know where to start, because we've got such a fundamental lack of civic education in our country that,
oh my word, yes.
I saw today the Christ almighty, I have never seen a gun, a weapon like the AR-15 morph into an armament of such biblical degree of misunderstanding. Some idiot was talking about, well, people shouldn't be walking around on the street with the like a equivalent of a regiment strength weapon, blah blah blah. That's not
what? A
regiment strength. Yeah, 800 men, with AR-15s. What are they going to do? Terrorize a squirrel army? Jesus Christ.
Well, it is a force multiplier, but not an 800x force multiplier.
No kidding. It's positively stupid comments being made by people and saying, well, the founders never intended for the kinds of weapons that we have now. People owned their own cannons. They outfitted their ships with their own cannons. It was heartily encouraged because no one took to the sea as a merchant without defending themselves. Most definitely not as a privateer without defending themselves. Who the hell do you think owned those cannons that you see in little towns all around?
Some old retired guy who goes by the name of the Commodore. I don't know.
Yeah, usually. Usually it was something somebody donated.
There was a guy who had 2 brass cannons on his front porch step, I believe, in Monterey. And he would send the city of Monterey an invoice every year. I think it was for $1 for preventing Moorish invasion of Monterey. It was in the $1 was for the care and upkeep of his cannons that were on his.
You needed a new Tenebrasso.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's it.
Well, that's
they
good.
were anyway.
You could own a tank. I mean, you could buy a tank. It's not supposed to be workable, but we did not have any restriction on firearms.
Well, here's the thing. Population density has really changed everything.
Yes, it has.
60% of the United States population lives in cities.
There's our problem.
Okay? And that's a huge that means that the people who live in cities probably can't have the same range of rights that people who don't live in cities can have comfortably. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that if you say here are all the comfortable things you can have and live in the city, open carry may not be one of them, because open carry where people are that close together and somebody can just reach over, yank your gun out of your holster and start opening up on people. You don't have cultural homogeneity that you tend to have in rural areas in the United States. You just it argues for a different way of living and potentially abrogation of some of the rights that you might have in a rural setting that you can't have in an urban setting.
Control of those rights, at least. I mean, limitations on them, which it's, that's anathema to me. And
it argues for local government so that local jurisdictions can make decisions like this and design laws and design regulations, design environments that match up to the desires of most of them who work there. And that really is the big argument for local government.
It is
that you'll never be able from a centralized authority, you'll never be able to achieve the level of satisfaction and happiness that you can achieve by making your rules locally and having those rules designed and made by local people.
Yep.
It never will be as good coming from the federal government.
Well, no, because it's one size fits all, and Wyoming
Right.
and Ohio are not
$15 an hour, no matter where you live. $15 an hour in New York City versus $15 an hour in Casper, Wyoming. Two different things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't allow the marketplace to function naturally. Well, that's the problem with minimum wage. So that's another thing. Make it go away, please. I know that.
So have we solved anything tonight at all?
No.
Or were we just more? Is it more problem identification? Is that? I guess that's what we do on this show.
Well, we have solved one problem. We understand the mind of an accelerationist better than we did before.
Well, there's that.
Because
we got that going for us, which is
we've got that going because we've gone through. We could do this. No, we can't do that. We could do this. No, we can't do that. Our president reminds us of a syphilitic, mentally ill, decaying Roman emperor. Okay.
Yeah.
What can we do about that?
For kids.
I don't know. We could replace number 2 with somebody else, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the chaos. I think probably the thing that is hampering us from even looking at solution is how quickly things are flying apart, to go back to Yates. I mean, they're flying apart. The interesting thing that Trump did was pull the curtain back and provide a hearty and choke-worthy black pill to
a choke-worthy black pill
to a large segment of the population. I mean, I think a lot of us were actually taken aback by we knew there was significant rot. Well, speaking for myself, I knew there was significant rot. I had been afraid to go to the place where I am now. That the rot is far worse than I even imagined it was. I mean, those 4 years of Trump were just a succession of black pills for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I already,
Really?
yeah, it was just one thing after another.
Mm-hmm.
One thing after another fell into the Christ. Now that's corrupt too. Oh my God, I had no idea the corruption ran as deeply as it did. You know, it's been very easy to blithely point to DC as the center of all things stinky. But and in certain instances with Leviathan federal agencies, we knew that fanned out.
Right.
But to the extent that it has fanned out, and
that there's local rot.
Oh, the local rot is gobsmacking. I mean, it's as far as how far the
It's on your school boards, man.
How far the fifth column has invaded.
Mm-hmm.
They've accomplished most of their goals, and it's quite depressing. If you go back and read Ronald Reagan's letters, he discussed in the early 60s, as he was going through his political transmogrification back to a Goldwater conservative, basically.
If you want to get blackpilled, read Goldwater.
Yeah.
Forget Reagan. Just skip right to the undiluted cask strength black pill juice.
Yeah, I mean, in the Angels didn't even want their share of that. But he was talking about the fifth column. And the fifth column was, of course, the Communist Party working in the United States through its various agents and its ideological seduction. And it infiltrated public education and particularly higher education initially, and managed to seduce enough people that they would go forth and spread that rot downward to the point now that we have Sesame Street is engaged in propaganda.
Oh, they have been for a while.
Yeah. But I mean, this is overt, disgusting levels of. This is Chi-Com shit.
I know. There is one way to fix this, but it's even less. That doesn't involve tearing everything down and rebuilding it. And I don't think this is necessarily going to happen. But if people reach the point where if basically these idiots overplayed their hand to the point where people woke up and said, yeah, I'm not going to put up with this crap anymore.
Yeah.
If a majority of the people just said, look, we demand ethics in government. We demand a return to these kinds of values, and essentially pushed it more toward it being an honorable position like the Japanese were. Like the Japanese thing you described. If we insisted that that is what we wanted, we could probably get back a lot of what we've lost. But because there is this whole question of what's downstream from what. Is politics downstream from culture or vice versa? So if you can't fix the politics, fix the culture. And that might be a much easier thing to do than fixing the politics.
Yeah, I read an article today that was posted amongst our friends about that what caused McAuliffe to lose Virginia was intensely cultural, and it centered all around the schools, because one thing the pandemic did is it made parents pay attention to what educators were doing. And one woman was asked, her political alignment is Democrat. Mm-hmm. And she thinks the Democrats have the best policy. But the whole thing with the schools broke her, because she said this was a Hispanic woman, and she said for an entire year, parents were put in the position of educators the way this home learning was being done. Yet we're being told by the governor that we don't have any role in education now, that we're going to go back to the way things were. You know, the failure to reopen schools when parents wanted schools reopened, the utter disregard of their concerns regarding CRT and other things within the school. The woman voted for Youngkin. She supported Terry McAuliffe's policies, except when it came to his attitude toward education.
Mhm.
And that was enough to flip. That is a very local issue.
Well, you make an example of that. I think what Harry was getting at was it may not be possible to fix the politics without fixing the culture.
Yeah.
I actually think that was he was kind of coming at it was saying that it would be easier to fix the culture than to fix the politics. I think the politics are such a follow-on to culture.
Yeah.
That they don't fix by themselves. You can kind of try and rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic there, but I think he's got a point. I actually think you have to do some basic things down in the culture to begin writing that ship.
I think Andrew Breitbart was right in that regard.
He was,
How so?
and the Republicans have figured out at least one thing. Sorry,
Politics is downstream from culture.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Republicans have actually been bringing in some new talent and some pretty good people, like your new lieutenant governor.
Yes.
And there are a lot of
white
people like that
supremacists?
because because it's not enough to just say, oh well, we're tired of Democrats, let's let the same old Republicans we didn't like before come in.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Fresh faces.
You've got to bring in some fresh faces, and sometimes it's just about somebody sort of reinventing themselves. I mean, I don't necessarily want Ted Cruz to be president today, but he's done a good job of remaking himself into his current incarnation.
And maybe that's his more natural state when he's not on politically.
Yeah, when he's not worried about becoming president, he's a lot more likable.
Yeah. I could never put together the Ted Cruz of the intellect I recognized and the one-on-one interviews that I'd seen him do with candidate Ted Cruz. I could not get those two images to coalesce properly. He came across as ministerial and scoldy. I mean, pulpit ministerial.
You talking about Cruz?
Yes. He sounded like a pissed off Southern Baptist preacher half the time. And I was like, he ain't gonna win anybody thumping the pulpit like that, Ted.
Yeah.
Did either of you, or have either of you seen the Iannucci thing, The Thick of It?
Mm-mm.
No. What are you talking about?
Okay, it's actually a UK drama that ran for a few years, and it basically follows the fictional inner workings of a cabinet minister or multiple cabinet ministers in the UK. Peter Capaldi plays this character based on a real life guy. The character's name is Malcolm Tucker, and he is just this absolutely savage political schemer manipulator that essentially runs as the go-between between the prime minister and the various ministers in the cabinets. It is so freaking funny, but really insightful at the same time, because it'll just be little things like the press asking the minister to move just a little bit, and then they move and get a picture of her in front of something where, since she's standing in front of a billboard, it now says something funny, and then it hits the news. It's that level of sort of insider kind of stuff. So part of why I think of politics differently might be because I grew up in a very political family, and I've talked to people who did this stuff for a living, and I've sort of immersed myself in like this sort of Iannucci kind of thing. So I have a glimpse into what
the theater of it.
Yeah, the theater of it and kind of the workings behind the scenes, what it's like. So I think he also did Veep, but I'm not so sure that he's got the same fire that he used to have. The thick of it is actually really quite good.
The theater of politics, theater I consider to be part of culture. What we like and consume in theater.
Mm-hmm.
And in that regard, again, what we approve of and what we disapprove of in the characteristics of the performance of candidates, how they address people, how they address the camera, how they address, we are rather, it's like voting for the Oscars, isn't it?
I know, but there's
primaries have gotten turned into these kinds of perverse pageants.
Well, and the press has distorted everything. This was the point I was clumsily trying to get to, which is there are people like Malcolm Tucker. They exist. They are real people. He is modeled on a real person. Very smart, very savage people. And they have weaponized the press. The Clintons started this. What was that? What was that? Kaufman and the people who like put together Friends and stuff. They brought in that advertising production firm thing, and they really were the first ones to start changing stuff around the way people look. Somebody like Ted Cruz, any little mistake, anything, even if it's not really a mistake, if it can just be cast as a mistake, they will do it. The press will hound him relentlessly over anything, like that misstep over his family going on vacation when the power problems were going on in Texas. They took what was a fairly innocuous thing and managed to spin it into this whole thing about how he's out of touch and doesn't care about regular Texans. And it's like, just wait a second.
Because
none of this is even remotely fair.
Yeah, because U.S. senators have everything to do with how the state of Texas operates its power supply. I mean, the only thing he could do is call Abbott and say, Christ's sake, get it fixed.
Yeah. But this whole talking points bullshit with, Rahm Emanuel and that whole crowd and all the Clintonistas, I think it's a mistake to underestimate just how much of this is the Clintons' fault.
Oh, yeah, because they all talked about Reagan as being the Hollywood president. Oh, hardy fucking har.
I know.
I mean, Bill Clinton, he goes on the Tonight Show and plays the saxophone. Well, it's not a goddamn talent contest. Excuse me, Mr. America, but, I wasn't interested in the talent portion of this thing. I'm interested in how you answered those questions. The substantive ones. Not the what's your favorite breakfast cereal. And as a result, we are having discussions in the media, present day, about how many fucking scoops of ice cream somebody eats when they're in the White House. That is just bizarro world. That is absolute bizarro world. I mean, the first stupid social flap I ever saw was the whole LBJ with the Beagle's ears, the Basset Hound ears.
Yep.
Yeah.
And but that was a flash in the pan, and then it was done.
In the Loop is a movie based on that same sort of universe.
That was the spinoff.
The one with well, it's not really a spinoff because it's sort of like based on the same thing, but they moved a bunch of characters around. It's practically in a parallel universe. But that was the one with James Gandolfini before he passed away.
Okay.
And I don't like that movie as much as I like that series, but it gives you an insight into all the Machiavellian stuff that's going on, because there are people like that. They are really little Machiavellis.
They really are.
And I don't think most people don't
Mm-hmm.
see the influence that these people have.
They're worse. They're Richelieu's.
Yeah.
A good one.
Machiavelli.
10 points to Gryffindor.
Yeah, Machiavelli was a toady. Richelieu was the power behind the throne.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll be known as Blumenthal's going forward.
Yeah.
In the same way that Richelieu, the same corruption.
Good old Sid.
Yeah.
And that crowd of shitbags.
Yeah, they really are to a person. But it has come to my attention that you guys have spent 2 hours of your life with us once again, and I want to thank all you guys coming in and listening to us prattle on for a couple of hours, and thank my panel, and thank Jenna had to leave early. Sorry about that. Hope she's feeling better. Thank you guys, my friends, for coming and hanging out with me this evening. The quote I was thinking of tonight was actually one by Ludwig von Mises. It's the one where he said, there is no more dangerous menace to civilization than a government of incompetent, corrupt, or vile men. But I'm reminded that Upton Sinclair also said, one of the necessary accompaniments of capitalism in a democracy is political corruption. So there you have it. I'm not sure who wins between those two.
Mises.
I don't know who wins, but we all lose.
I'll leave it with Teddy Roosevelt, who said, under government ownership, corruption can flourish just as rankly as under private ownership. People are going to people, I'm afraid. But that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Thanks for coming out and listening to us. It's been fun. As always, we'll do it again next week. Yeah. But for tonight, the zoo is closed. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Go home.
Get the fuck out of here.
Oh, did Skep eat himself?
I think so. Without shutting down the stream.
It's just the two of us.
It's just the two of us.
Hey, we're still alive.
Yeah, we're still live.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of cool. I guess we should wait for mine host to.
Well, I mean, do we do a little soft shoe? Do we keep people entertained?
Yeah,
I did that. I dragged my mouse across a
well, we're still live. So
we're still live.
Still live. How about that? So I was trying to end the stream. Let's try it this time. The zoo is closed for real this time. Good night, guys.
A priest or rabbi